interesting. When everything seems to collide with Donald Trump and things start going really bad,
he deflects.
He decides he's going to take a meeting with a group of tyrants. He did he did North Korea.
It's a playbook. Yeah.
And it is a playbook.
People made fun of us.
I mean, with North Korea, at a particular time when Stormy Daniels was about to hit the front pages, he went there. Now he's open to meetings with the Iranians. I guess after this, when he gets in trouble, I guess he'll talk about meeting with the Martians. Let's take a quick look at the President of the United States doing what he likes to do most, deflect.
I'll meet with anybody. I believe in meeting. I would certainly meet with Iran if they wanted to meet. I don't know that they're ready yet. They're having a hard time right now. But I ended the Iran deal. It was a ridiculous deal. I do believe that they will probably end up wanting to meet, and I'm ready to meet anytime they want to. And I don't do that from strength or from weakness. I think it's an appropriate thing to do. If we could work something out that's meaningful, not the waste of paper that the other deal was, I would certainly be willing to meet.
Do you have preconditions for that meeting?
No preconditions, no. They want to meet, I'll meet. Anytime they want. Anytime they want. It's good for the country, good for them, good for us, and good for the world. No preconditions. If they want to meet, I'll meet.
So the reason why the world needed to have someone at the meeting with Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump is because in the past week or so since Helsinki, Donald Trump has sent a signal that he wants to lift sanctions on an oligarch who's close to Vladimir Putin that we just put on a couple months ago. And two, now he's talking again from a position of weakness, wanting to meet with Iran. It's a complete 180 turn. There's very little actually to explain that, Richard, but there is a playbook for Donald Trump. Threaten to bomb a terrorist state, say you want to meet with a terrorist state, and then capitulate to the terrorist state. Are we going to see what happened in North Korea happen with Iran now?
Almost certainly not. If the administration were serious about meeting with Iran, they would have done it before they unilaterally got out of the nuclear deal that, by the way, Iran was compliant with.
What if Putin asked him to reach out to Iran?
And the other reason, the Iranians want no part of it. The Iranians are not going to sit down with somebody. The Secretary of State the other day gave a big speech essentially calling for regime change. The administration is ratcheting up sanctions. Again, they got out of the nuclear deal after the president said he'd meet without preconditions. Both the National Security Council and the Secretary of State basically started listing the preconditions on nuclear issues, on Iran's regional behavior, on how they're treating their own people.
But you could look at what we've been saying about North Korea all along, and you have Donald Trump declaring victory in North Korea when the North Koreans now, we keep finding out more ways that they're cheating. And in fact, their nuclear program is more dangerous today, U.S. intelligence officials tell us, than it was when Donald Trump first started negotiating with the North Koreans.
Yeah, there's a front page story in the Washington Post today that said after last week's story about their nuclear program, now we learned that their missile program, their intercontinental ballistic missile program is continuing. The only word I take exception with, Joe, is cheating. We don't know if North Korea is cheating. Why? Because we don't know what the United States and North Korea agreed to. If you look at that communique that came out of the Singapore summit, it was like a piece of Swiss cheese where the holes were bigger than the cheese. So again, we've had two summits.
But we do know this. Donald Trump said Americans can sleep at night, that nuclear weapons were no longer a problem with North Korea. We know that's a lie.
We know that's a lie, and nothing like that was accomplished. Again, what we're seeing is this pattern of summits where the promise is great, we don't really know what was agreed on, and then there's both, it's wrong at both ends. There's no preparation, and there's no follow-through, no engine, no caboose. So all these summits essentially leave us worse off than we were without them.
Think about it, Willie. The North Korean leader leaves far stronger than when he first met with Trump. Yeah. Putin, much stronger than, I mean, he made Donald Trump look like his patsy on the world stage. He's much stronger than he was before. And now Trump is saying, we don't negotiate from a position of weakness or strength. No, if you're the United States of America, I'm sorry, you always negotiate from a position of strength.
And as Richard points out, the president is supposed to come in sort of at the end of the process and do the handshake and sign the declaration, not come in at the beginning, making promises and then declaring victory at the end of a press conference where nothing was actually achieved. One of the patterns we've seen in this Trump administration is the president makes a grand public declaration and then the rest of the administration comes in to reshape it or clean it up. As Richard mentioned, yesterday, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo talked about all the preconditions he would need to see before a meeting with Iran.
If the Iranians demonstrate a commitment to make fundamental changes in how they treat their own people, reduce their malign behavior, can agree that it's worthwhile to enter in a nuclear agreement that actually prevents proliferation, then the president said he's prepared to sit down and have the conversation with them.
Richard, this is one of the things they tried to get at in that hearing, the Senate hearing last week. Who should the American people, who should the United States Senate listen to? Because you have President Trump saying one thing on the big stage, and then people like Pompeo, Bolton, and others coming in after the fact and saying something completely contradictory.
I think the answer is clear. You listen to the President of the United States, and that's what the rest of the world is figuring out. And as much as they may respect the Secretary of Defense or the Secretary of State, at the end of the day, if they don't speak for the United States, and it doesn't appear they do, how can you listen to them? Look, the two summits we've had, they weren't in the room. The two summits we had, there was no staff in the room. So the President of the United States has become the chief diplomat of the United States. We have got to learn that's reality. So the Secretary of State and others can come in before or afterwards and try to clean it up. But he is, look, I like Pompeo, don't get me wrong, but I think the President's putting him in an extraordinarily difficult, almost untenable position, like he did with Rex Tillerson, where if you're not in the room and you don't know what transacted, how is it you can authoritatively say this is the foreign policy of the United States?
So, Jim, you were talking about how Republicans trust Donald Trump more than they trust their family. They trust Donald Trump more than they trust the media. So, at what point do Republicans, the question we continue to ask, what point do Republicans say, well, wait a second, we were anti-Putin and anti-Russian, didn't like him shooting down commercial aircrafts or invading other countries, poisoning people, assassinating. But now Donald Trump says he's okay, so he's okay. And he's rewriting 70 years of American foreign policy that Republicans championed. And then he makes nice with North Korea. And now he sounds so weak, basically begging the Iranians for a summit. At what point does somebody like Nikki Haley go, you know what, I'm out. I'm running against this guy in 2020 before he ends up like turning U.S. foreign policy over to all of our enemies. I was critical. If you remember, I was critical, and every other conservative was critical of Barack Obama being so focused on dealing with Iran and Cuba. Right. That was child's play. Donald Trump is North Korea, Russia, now Iran. There is not a tyrant. There's not a terror state that this guy doesn't want to cozy up to.
I mean, the answer is, at least all the evidence that we've seen to date, is never. Never. That's what I can't stress enough. There's no evidence whatsoever that his base supporter or any member of Congress is actually turning on him in any public way. I'd say the opposite is true. He's growing more powerful. His sway is growing more powerful
because conservatives now like Iran, and conservatives like North Korea, and conservatives like Russia?
I don't think most people pay that close attention to it. I think that people look at him and they say, you know what, he's doing it different. The old way didn't work. I don't believe any of you guys on the set. Yeah. They don't trust us. They trust him.
Like I say, they can go on the Google machine for 30 seconds. You don't have to trust me. Just go to your neighbor's Google machine and type some stuff in. The truth is out there, but this isn't the X-Files.
But Russia was the perfect example. It never happened, right? We all thought, oh my God, you can't sit there and meet alone with Putin for 2 hours. You can't go and treat him like the Pope when you're standing next to him. Surely Republicans will turn on him. Nobody turned on him. Nobody. Even the couple of congressmen who came out and said, well, I have some concerns about that. Within 24 hours, they all ran for the hills.
It's
Why?
Painful.
Because they fear the base. The base loves Trump. They
somebody needs to tell the base the truth, and you can do that. You can go to town hall meetings and actually, how do you tell the base the truth? They ought to try it sometime. I mean, you have, again, with Donald Trump, you have him capitulating to terror states. And then you had Steve Scalise actually joining in, somebody in the Republican majority joining in, signing on to impeach Rod Rosenstein because they're trying to get to the bottom of Vladimir Putin and his attempts to undermine American democracy. Now, that is a Republican leader, not a backbencher. That is a Republican leader who is actually working hard to subvert an investigation that has already indicted several dozen Russians. And we have the goods. The U.S. military, the U.S. intel community has the goods on the Russians. They tried to subvert American democracy in 2016. And Steve Scalise is signing on with Freedom Caucus backbenchers to try to actually subvert an investigation over someone actually trying to undermine American democracy?
Joe, I saw your tweet yesterday about how this election in 2018 is going to be the most important of our lifetimes for a lot of people. And I think that is your answer. Whether you want to go down, whether it's foreign policy or it's guns or it's the tax cuts, there's going to be another proposed round of tax cuts for the wealthy now. At the same time that President Trump's base is closing ranks around him, look into the poll numbers and see what's happening with the intensity of the disapproval on the other side of the ledger. And that's why this election is so important, but that's also why it's so hard to tell exactly what's going to happen to match those numbers up, because what we could see here is a repeat of what happened with Barack Obama, which is that when Barack Obama was not on the ballot in the midterms, his people didn't come out, but there was an intensity on the other side of the ledger that swept Democrats. Yeah. And you could see the same thing happening here, just because those numbers are becoming stronger with each one of these examples that you cite. The intensity of the disapproval on the other side is strengthening manifold, twofold, threefold.
I just want to make one more point about Iran before we go to break.
Yes.
We often ask, what if Obama had done this? We don't have to ask what if Obama did. He did it during a debate almost to the week in 2007, 11 years ago. He said he'd meet with Ahmadinejad without preconditions, was absolutely savaged, not only by Republicans, but by Hillary Clinton and Democrats as well.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.